Shall we play a game?
And now I'm gonna pick the queen, the Camilla, the queen of the vacation rental industry. Should I do it, Miriam? Should I pick the queen? It looks like Miriam has an answer. Miriam, you get the pick.
Harry. Steve Schwab.
Oh,
Let the 75th Hunger Games begin. May the odds be ever in your favor.
Welcome to the Straight Fire VR Summer Games, where we pay tribute to those in the vacation rental royalty. A leaner market means only the fittest will survive. Those who have been treading water the past year may be fated to sink in an untimely manner. Joining in the games is a returning guest, an expert of revenue management, the founder and CEO of Wheelhouse, Andrew Kitchell. Overseeing today's games is our co-host and regional director of business development at Vtrips, Miriam Ramsey. Our host is the founder and CEO of Vtrips, Steve Milo. Steve, please get into position to commence the games.
hey, welcome. Thank you, Heather. We got Andrew Kitchell back on, and of course our co-host Miriam Ramsey for another episode of Straight Fire VR. And I remember just recently seeing Andrew in New Orleans at the VRMA, and he asked when we would bring him back on, and I said, well, he was a little shy with his answers, and he said, no, he would be much better this time. So,
oh, really?
And I have Heather here because it's one of her favorite subjects. We're going to do a game called VR royalty, so vacation rental royalty, and we're going to pick people who are most like the British royal family. And at the end, and we get to each pick, we'll take turns. Can't repeat the same person, so that's out. You can't pick anyone from either of our companies, so no Vtrips, no Wheelhouse employees. And at the end, Heather's going to pick the winner. Does that sound good, Andrew? You ready?
Tell me more. So the most like the royal family, as in what are we going for here?
We're going to start off with King Charles and Queen Camilla. Then we're going to go to Prince William and Princess Kate Middleton. And then we'll end up with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. So you have to pick people who are, I don't know, similar or you think are vacation rental royalty, okay? Does that sound good, Miriam? You got the game?
Oh, I am. I'm thinking.
Okay.
I've got it. This is going to be.
Andrew looks like he's thinking too. I'll go first just to get it going. Then we'll
Yeah,
let
hit it.
Miriam go, and then Andrew. So, okay, we're going to start off with the king of the vacation rental industry, the King Charles, the one who is the ruler. It has to be someone royal, someone who brings up the image of being in control and being stately. And
So,
the person,
hold on. So is it the person who is this or wants to be this?
it could be either. It's up to your interpretation. Heather's going to pick the winner.
Okay.
Okay. The person I'm going to pick to represent the king of the vacation rental industry, and you have to kind of just imagine King Charles with no hair. He has a little bit of hair, but just imagine he had no hair. I'm going to pick, you ready for it, Miriam?
Mm-hmm.
Tim Cafferty. Tim Cafferty. He's vacation rental royalty. And I think he is the king of the vacation rental industry. You two are going to have a hard time catching up with that one. And now I'm going to pick the queen, the Camilla, the queen of the vacation rental industry. Should I do it, Miriam? Should I pick the queen? Should I think it's a natural fit. I'm going to go, Andrew, with Sarah Bradford as the queen of the vacation rental industry.
Talk about a cop-out.
All right, I'm winning already. I feel
Yeah.
real good about my answers. Miriam, it's your chance. You've got to beat me. I don't want to smoke you guys right at the beginning.
So we've got to beat you at the king? I mean,
Miriam, you want me to go?
No, I got it. Because I'm
Okay.
going to go with Brian Chesky as my king.
Oh,
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 dang.
That's a good one.
see? No, I feel like we're getting somewhere now. Erin going for my queen.
oh wow. She picked the one that's the new CEO of Expedia. How about that, Andrew?
Okay, well, I want to hear Miriam. Tell me a little bit more about those picks. How did you think about that?
Just because you're trying to turn it around on me because you don't know where you're going with now.
I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly where I'm
Let's
going.
go. Let's hear your responses first.
Okay. When I think of a king or a stately individual who is, let's just imagine a king, and maybe not King Charles like, but just a king, I think of Ben Edwards. And I think of someone who's taught me a huge amount about the industry. He knows all the things. He's connected to everyone. He's been around. He's been involved in Verma. He knows it. He tells it like it is. He's got, he's an operator. He's got his business.
I do love Ben. I love Ben.
I think he is a special human among a lot of great folks.
I
My
like his
queen,
little
the queen is the easiest call ever. And she was considering joining us today. It is Amy Hino. It's obvious. Amy is just without compare. I mean, I want her at events. I want to go to her events. She knows everyone. We all love her and admire her and kind of want to be with her. So it's like, yeah, my king queen are really easy. I think of those two people as just incredibly well connected, thoughtful folks.
It's Miriam's turn, and she's got to pick the Prince Williams and the Kate Middleton. These are like the up and comers. So they're not quite the king and the queen. They're the next generation of people. Pressure is on.
William and Kate. No, I was going to go with Ben and Tiffany here. I do love Ben. And I think Tiffany is that next. I'm better with her with the queen. I mean, I like Amy. I don't love Amy. But, I mean, I think Tiffany and Ben are my next king and queen. So I'm going to do them as my William and Kate.
All right. Andrew, you got to pick a different William and Kate.
Okay, you do have to give me 30 more seconds on this. Steve, you got some answers?
All right, you want me to go? He's passing.
He is passing.
Just for a sec.
Miriam.
Just for a sec.
And I have one. Miriam kind of came on strong, picking Brian Chesky. That was a good one. I agree with that. So I got to pick somebody. I'm going to pick someone who lives in the United Kingdom. I'm going to pick someone who runs a very, very large company there, has an empire. I'm going to pick Graham Donahue.
Graham Donahue, yeah.
And for
the king.
Kate Middleton, the princess in waiting. I'm also going to go to the UK, although I think she's moved around Europe now. But she's big, like Kate Middleton, into charitable works. She's really big into the environment. Vanessa D'Souza is the princess in waiting of the vacation rental industry. All right, Andrew, the pressure is on.
Princess is waiting. Michelle Williams, Atlanta Vacation, now the current leader of Verma. She's also got a postdoc in English literature, I believe. So she's deeply connected to the actual royalty. She's awesome, smart, motivated. Michelle Williams, easier than my Prince William. And I admit, just so the audience knows, these questions were not shared in advance. That's why I'm taking a minute here. I'm trying to think who fits this mold in a way that's actually big.
All right, let me give you a hint of somebody who could fit this mold that's in the tech space.
Yeah.
First name Ami.
Amiad. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's interesting. That's much more. I think of Amiad as bordering on that king level. He's just a champ.
Well, he's the king. He's the up and coming king, right?
Yeah. Well, I was going to go with some of the young tech players, and I was thinking of The CEO of Top Key came to mind, Jonathan Sukiya. CEO of Enzo came to mind, Francois Guelo. I think that's like a little bit further away, maybe like, but yeah, Amyad's a fucking champ. He's part of my language. He's a champ. And I put him up there with someone who's blending into our space, actually, Richard Valter, over as CEO of Muse, as a interesting, $1 billion valuation around that company. Huge fundraising. He's a wizard at fundraising. He's making investments. They've got hundreds of teams connected to them across hospitality. I think he's set himself up pretty well. That team over there set up themselves pretty well for a good battle.
All right. So final answer, which one?
Richard Valter.
Okay, there we go. All right. Now you get to go first again, Andrew. You need to pick the Prince Harry and the Meghan Markle of the vacation rental industry.
All right. So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have left royalty. They've moved to America. They've established their own brand.
The pressure is on Andrew to come up with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Why don't we go to Miriam? It looks like Miriam has an answer. Miriam, you get the pick.
Prince Harry. Steve Schwab.
Oh, look at that, Andrew. That's hard to keep up. Okay, well, who's your Princess Meghan Markle? Or
Oh,
is
hell, I
she
know that
Duchess?
real quick. Yeah, Amber Hurdle.
Amber. Wow. Wow, that's some heat, Andrew. Are you ready, Andrew?
I'm still thinking. I mean, I'm trying to think.
Okay, I have to go next then.
Steve just want to do better than I.
I'm gonna pick. I've got to pick someone that's a self promoter for the Prince Harry. Someone who kind of looks a little like Prince Harry. Kind of a scruffy little beard and that look.
And
I'm going to pick Will Slickers as the Prince Harry of the vacation rental industry. And for Meghan Markle, I'm going to pick Emily Patillo.
Patillo.
Yeah, she's with Highgate. She's kind of come out of nowhere.
She's
She's what?
iconic.
Wow.
Well, she was
All
at,
right.
she was at Cassiola, and she crushed, and then she went to Highgate, and now she's part of the Red Prop group. I've got two here. I've got two. So I've got an awesome couple here, and they actually are really good friends, so they're gonna make a good couple. So my two people have both left cushy circumstances and decided to go their own way. And they're very early in this move, and it might work out, or who knows? So number one, Cameron Felton, who built the revenue management machine over at Evolve, who has recently left to go back into property management space. He's joined a team, No Madness. They're small, but he decided after putting 7 years into building a very good revenue system that it was time for him to take a swing. He left. And he's very dear friends with Sarah Franzen, who spent the last, 8-10 years building up Natural Retreats approach to revenue management. And she decided to leave to start her own business too.
I like her.
They both left good circumstances. It's TBD. They're taking a risk, taking a swing. I'm rooting for them. TBD.
All right, good choices. All right, this is it. The bonus round. I'm going to start with Miriam.
I just got a name. I had no idea. I am not a royalty expert, and I had no idea we were going here. But I'm glad we got a bonus round on the bonus round.
All right, last one. Prince Andrew. Now, Prince Andrew at one point was the favorite of the Queen, and then he's kind of fallen on some bad times, some links to maybe Epstein Island, allegedly.
Does he like
Miriam,
to, does he like to swim? Does he like to swim? I got my boy Matt Landau killing it. And I love me some Matt.
all right, that's incredible. Andrew, you have to pick your namesake, the Prince Andrew of the vacation rental industry.
Boy, Steve, you know how to put me on the spot. So what's Prince Andrew done in his life? Not too much. Ridden riches. And kind of abused that privilege. Maybe taking advantage of people. Right?
Yeah, some could say that.
Oh, well, maybe I didn't do good here.
Yeah. I don't think Matt Landau fits that. I think Matt Landau's got a heart of gold. The one person who's kind of left the industry is my ex co-founder who kind of fits this mold, Ian McHenry.
Oh wow, some shade thrown. Ian McHenry.
All of our defense, we don't know who these royalty people are.
All right, I've got to win. So I've got the perfect Prince Andrew, someone who has kind of a dodgy past, and more skeletons emerge constantly. I'm going to pick Brooke Fouts. So that's my answer there. So
this is a tough section. This is definitely not what I came prepared to talk about today.
Well, we had to play a game. Heather, who okay, you got to tell us who won, and then we have to move on to real industry events and news.
Steve, for having written the rules and fully knowing it weeks in
Prepared.
advance of the fellow contestants, you win honorable mention.
Oh,
Miriam Ramsey and Andrew Kitchell were neck and neck. I was going to give it to one of the two because I felt that person took no prisoners. However, like a dark horse, Andrew throwing that former partner under the bus, so close to you, so personal, you win.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of history there, Heather. There's a lot there.
all right. Well, thank you, Heather. We're gonna now start to talk about vacation rental news. So, Andrew, we had to have you on. The summer is here, and a lot of companies are signaling that they're down versus last year. How do we know? Because Vacasa had a terrible earnings call. They indicated that at least Q1, their RevPAR was down 19%, 2024 versus 2023 first quarter, and they refused to provide guidance other than to say their numbers were deteriorating. So not a happy earnings call. You obviously get a lot of data. What are you seeing as we head into the summer? Is it as bleak as Vacasa is saying? Do you see light ahead of the tunnel? What are you seeing?
I mean, it's per usual, Steve. We're seeing successes and we're seeing people scared right now. Just to be blunt, I think definitely booking pace is trailing behind where it's been for the last 2 years. We are seeing markets in Alabama and Cocoa Beach, Florida, and others that come to mind where people are continuing to both really rapidly scale their portfolio and drive higher RevPAR. So it's not out of the question for anyone listening to be able to achieve the same. I think when you see what's kind of like the reality for me is looking at some of Expedia's weakness as well, right? In terms of their performance. And yeah, Expedia's overall kind of accommodations revenue is up, but all of that's attributable hotels. And actually, if you look at their data and parse it apart, it means that short-term rentals are actually down for Expedia and Vrbo. So our growth just isn't there. So Airbnb continues to take market share. That's interesting, but a lot of that growth is overseas. It's not actually happening in North America right now. So no, it's a scary time. And Steve, I watched one of your talks last night with Graham talking about just the major scary economic factors that are weighing on all folks right now. Whether it's continued inflation, which has persisted for much longer. It's a little bit of a scary time. It's not all, bleakness, but you've got to be operating really, really well right now to be in a position to grow or maintain market share.
Wow, Miriam, pretty sober. We were having so much fun with that game. Now the reality is coming. So,
Yeah.
Miriam, we have seen a tick over the last 4 weeks in advanced bookings. Do you think it's as simple as consumer credit is so tight, people are waiting to book closer in? Or is it because consumers now have learned there's more supply, and if they wait to book, prices will drop?
I think it's both. I think we're really going to see more of that 50-50 where there is more supply. They are learning the market that closer in prices do drop. So let's hold out. So I think you're seeing that, but I think also people are being very vigilant with their funds. They don't know what it's going to look like in 3 to 6 months, so they're holding off. I think it goes both ways. I think we're seeing a more tight index of spending, but we're also, individuals are learning the market with how we supply the data out. So we are dropping the rates, and I think people are starting to learn the process.
Can I
Yeah. So,
I
go
have
ahead,
one thing that's interesting? So if you look at overall travel spend, like the kind of crazy thing is we're back to pre-COVID levels.
Mhm.
And we're back to corporate travel. This year, we'll get back to pre-corporate levels. Now, for a lot of vacation destinations, that doesn't matter. But for urban folks, this again shows how, you can look at the big trends, but then you've got to get down to the inventory you're selling and who you're targeting to understand your actual performance, right? So it's this interesting tension of, in our space, there's been a lot more supply. Travel is, if you look at the overall number, back, but we've also, short-term rentals, vacation rentals have been so strong relatively for years that in some ways hotels are starting to kind of kick back a little bit and like grab a little more market share, which I think is very interesting. But I don't know if that's a little bit of mostly again driven by corporate travel return that hotel bookings are looking strong right now, or if there's something else going on. A little too early to tell.
Well, we look at data. Obviously, we're partners with Wheelhouse as well on the revenue management side. And one of the things we talked about, and I was at DARM and I was pretty honest with everybody. I was being interviewed by Michelle Marquis at DARM, was that in 2023, we did not do a good job with revenue management. Now, that's easy to say, right? So the harder part is why. And the reason that I believed we did not do as well is that we had liberalized or relaxed the booking rules too quickly, or in some cases, because we followed what happened after COVID, we didn't even really have booking rules for summer or other key portions, right? So in the past, we used to have, for instance, during summer, 1 week, Saturday arrival, Saturday departure, maybe up to 60 days prior to arrival. In Miriam's market, we'd start off with a 5-day minimum, 90 days out, and then we'd start to slowly reduce down to 2 or 3 days as we got closer in, right? So we used dynamic booking rules. What happened was it was so easy to book during COVID, and in some cases, people were willing to book anything, that we got away from those booking rules. Now, when you go to stricter booking rules and your competition doesn't, what happens is your competition may short-term get more bookings, but long-term, they may end up with a lot of what we call orphaned or widowed nights, gap nights, stuff in the weekday, even during July, that may be hard to book. And so when we looked at what happened in July, we believed that we just didn't maximize occupancy. And so we went back to booking rules, and it's a little scary because we were pacing so far behind. which is certainly something Vacasa talked about. But in May, we've seen it flip. And so we've seen a significant flip, in fact. Overall gross revenue is up pretty significantly. Our income is up by a good 20%. The things that are down, you might not be surprised, is average days before booking went from 52 nights to 48. It's not a huge number, but it's closer to 10%. And what Miriam said is ADR has dropped. ADR last year, 2023, was almost 15% higher. So, but the thing we were focused in on was number of nights, occupied nights, Andrew, which I know you and I have talked about. That's the number one thing I wanted to hit, was occupied nights. And at least for the first 20 days of 2024, we're running almost 18% ahead in occupied nights.
Awesome. So are we looking at a little bit of a RevPAR increase despite the ADR?
Right, because we drove occupied nights, right? So if we can continue to at that pacing of occupied nights, and to me, occupied nights makes everything else work, right? If you don't occupy the property, obviously you don't get fees. Obviously your owner doesn't get money. You don't get commission. There's nothing good that happens when you have an empty night. Now you may have owners that's, will fire you if you price stuff too low. But if you're communicating with the owner and you're letting them know, look, it's tricky. We've pre-booked 3 of your weeks in June at these rates, but you still have 1 week open, and we're going to discount it. They're probably going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
We've really closed the gap on June, and we're starting to make strides in July. But the reality is, we still have a decent chunk of inventory available for July, which makes some of our revenue managers nervous because they're used to selling out of July sooner. But I've said over and over again, I don't have a problem if we still have inventory available for July, because July will book. So we've held the line on pricing. Our pricing, even though we just talked about our overall pacing, the ADR being down quite a bit, for July, it's not a huge amount, but we're still running 2% ahead in ADR ahead of last year. So we've kind of held the line on pricing. Perhaps I'm going to be wrong, but we believe July will come in, and we're watching occupied nights very, very closely, because that's where we're missing right now. But we still have in our back pocket the ability to drop ADR for July. And I've been really working with the revenue management team not to panic yet, and just keep working our direct and our OTAs. And I know you have a lot of different clients, and I know everybody has a different idea. I know I've heard some companies just capitulated and were just trying to get whatever they could for June and July. But we've held steady, and I think if our pacing continues the way it has been for May, we're going to come out in pretty good shape, because we just believe that the overall calendar is compressed, and you can't give away those summers. You can't. Those summer weeks are your revenue weeks. If you give them away or you discount them too much, you're screwed in terms of revenue.
You shared a lot of interesting stuff there. Let's pull that up. I mean, I think one of the first interesting things you shared was your kind of prioritization, at least for May, and kind of maybe off peak for somewhat for you all. You were really focused on driving occupied nights, and you kind of hit it that, like, you're probably going to reduce owner complaints. You're going to get revenue on the books. You might be able to take more risk if you have some revenue already in the door on other nights, and hold the line higher. And you mentioned owner comms as well. How do you, and by the way, in a potentially slightly struggling economy, driving occupancies is the way, right? You can drive ADR when times are booming, but occupancy is a great driver when times are not so. How are you driving those owner comms, especially for people who are coming out of the COVID peak and saying, hey, we've got to shift our focus more to occupied nights?
It's education, and I think, Miriam's at the forefront, and unfortunately, she's the one, or fortunately, she's very good at working with the owners. They trust her. But Miriam, you've been having to have calls with these owners and just letting them know, look, here's what we're doing. We're not going to give away your properties for summer. Shoulder season is a different subject, but we've been holding the line on ADR, and we're trying to get the owners to just be patient and wait for the bookings to come in.
I think it really goes back to education, not now, but having this conversation 6, 8, 10 months ago. We all saw this coming. If you watch the podcast from last year, I say this pretty much the same thing every time. We saw this market coming this way. And so if you did not start with those conversations then, your owners are panicked. You will see high churn volume during the next couple of months if you did not have those conversations and educate these homeowners. But it's also knowing your homeowner and knowing, is this an investment? Is this a second home? And can they afford this home? Like, that's the 3 biggest things that I say across the board. If you have an investor owner, I can push occupied nights and lower ADR. A second home is both tricky with this because they don't need that capital gains. The third homeowner is the struggle. And that, again, goes back to education on, can they afford it? Can they not? This is what we have to do and move forward.
It's education, but I also, what I also love about that is, I always say that revenue management is a very boring term for your growth engine, right? And part of your growth is retention of owners and acquisition of new owners. And if you can be driving the conversation to that point where you're understanding what this home means to them and thinking about a strategy around that, that's ahead of the curve, to say it lightly. That's a really good practice, Miriam.
Thank you. And look, they tell you their story within the first 5 to 10 minutes of having a conversation.
Yeah. So just, and Andrew, you'll appreciate this because it's risky, right? You do a strategy like this, you're taking a hell of a lot of risk. So at this point last year, our July was 60% booked, what we ended up with occupied nights. This year we're at 50%. So that's a pretty significant gap. And as I said, we haven't reduced ADR. So we've held the line, and we've also held the line on booking rules. And as a result, listen to this, Andrew, our length of stay has ticked up. We've gone from 5.5 nights in 2023 to 5.8 in 2024. Now that may not, but that's pretty good because that's actually it's eliminating those gap nights. And so now that we're starting to get closer in, we will start to loosen those booking rules, still trying to keep ADR. ADR is the last thing we capitulate on. Now, again, people initially were concerned. We did this in March. It did not look good in February, this idea. And then, March came in, right? We had a big, huge gap in February for March. And then, March came in, which kind of ties into this idea that consumers are just waiting really close in the book based on consumer credit. But I'm going to give you a chance to respond, Andrew, and then I'm going to go over something else that's really interesting as well.
I guess I'm curious about, so your lead time for May, you're down at 48 days. I mean, for July, you're still looking at a lead time. Even now, if you're booking, you're looking at a 40 to 70 day lead time, right? And if you're coming in at 50% occupancy now, I would say that's a strong position to be in terms of like, hey, we've got a good base, and now we kind of execute on what inventory in some markets certainly is coming into kind of the peak booking window. So that's interesting. I guess one thing that's interesting is a professional operator, a professional brand is going to be able to do something that kind of the individual host can't do, which is if an individual host really tanks their rates, there's an assumption the traveler has, and there's a couple, the bookings actually flatline. They do not increase. And we think it's partly because consumers starts to distrust the property. Areas of distrust could be like, that's so cheap, it's a fraud, or it's so cheap, it must be poorly managed, something wrong with it, or it's so cheap, something must have changed, like the pool's not working. Like, what did I miss? For Vtrips, for other folks who have a good brand or trusted in market, the perception, because you can actually drop prices as stay dates approach and not have the drop off in bookings. You almost have like an extra lever to pull, and it appears to be associated with like, well, the traveler knows that the brand stands behind the delivery of a good experience or a good trip. So you all keeping prices higher for longer, Steve, that's what I heard you kind of saying, and protecting ADR in the summer is that'll be really interesting to watch how it plays out this year a little bit, but seems informed, wise, interesting.
Well, part of it, and I want to talk about this next, Andrew, is because the channel mix has changed. And that channel mix also impacts the last minute bookings or how far in advance. So let me just give you this data because I know you love numbers. So in April 2022, Airbnb was 8% of our OTA channel mix. In 2023, April was 18%.
Wow.
And in 2024, it is now 36%.
Wow.
So we've seen Airbnb really take a pretty strong position, whereas Vrbo went from 84% in April 2022, 62% in April 2023, and 44% in April 24. Those Vrbo and Airbnb customers are different, right? So the Vrbo customers tend to book further in advance. The Airbnb customer tends to book closer in. Those channels are just different. Not
Don't
that
say it's because of age. Don't say that. Let's move off of that.
Yeah,
No,
I'm curious if you look at that. Yeah.
I
So-
think it's market based too. Steve, can you see where it is as like a Florida or a Tennessee market? The difference.
Well, I'll give you one other number that's good, interesting data is our direct bookings went from 60% in 2023 April to 65% in 2024. So we've also been able to drive people direct. In terms of
Sorry, did you say six? You said 6 to 24%, or what were those numbers?
60% in April 2023 to 64
so far.
65% in 2024. So so you were asking based on regions. We are showing the biggest change are kind of the lower end regions that are coming in last minute. So where we're seeing or places with more inventory, like the Panhandle, is for sure. Gatlinburg's another market where everybody's booking last minute. Those are primarily where we're seeing more and more last minute bookings at this point. It is interesting, right? You would think that the markets with higher end properties would be struggling because they're expensive, but it appears the consumers that are being hurt the most probably by inflation, because inflation is regressive.
Well, those higher end properties probably also booked last year. I mean, if we break it down to see when was actual booked, those higher end units possibly do fall end of 23. Maybe wrong. I don't know. Wheelhouse, this is your crap. You should be telling me this.
I'm waiting for I mean, I've got a few more questions for Steve here that I want to pull apart, but you all are
Okay.
riffing right now.
We're done.
I got a question for you too, Steve, on the channel breakdown. It sounds like that by the numbers you shared, did booking go from what, 7% to 20% roughly?
Well, Booking.com struggled in April, but it was 3% in 2022 and 6% in 2024. That's disappointing. It was
Oh, wow.
closer
Yeah.
to 11% in March. One of the things we did, which I can't figure out what we did wrong, maybe you can figure it out, is Booking.com invited us to go into Genius Discount. Now, I didn't realize that Genius Discount meant the discount was coming from you. So we had to give them 10% of a discount to be in Genius. So what we said is, well, we'll just mark the pricing plan up another 10%. That tanked our listings on Booking.com. So I'm not sure how that happened. We were doing better without Genius discounts. So that was bad. We removed the Genius discount, and Booking has come back up closer to that 9 to 11% range that we had in March of 2024.
Okay.
So that's your homework.
Yeah, right. I mean, the crazy lever that your team's just fantastic at is the direct. Right. I mean, that's for folks who are listening. I mean, if you can control so much of your revenue coming through your channel, there's so many interesting things you can do. Where that Genius hit, probably, Steve, you felt it, but you didn't feel it like, I mean, it's going to kind of roll off your back if 65% of your business is coming direct. That's the lesson for folks.
Right. Yeah, we weren't hurt by that. And just to give a plug to a company that we had a little run in where they weren't doing so well. We pulled the API plug, and then they said there were technical problems, and we put them back in. Not Marriott Homes and Villas, by the way. No, it was Homes to Go. Homes to Go, at least for May, is a fairly material amount of revenue. It's doing reasonably well. So I was surprised by that. But, again, that's not going to make or break us. We also do a little business with StaySense and Google Vacations. But I mean, the bulk is coming from the big four, Vrbo, Airbnb, Expedia, and Booking.com.
Yeah. And you still break out Expedia and Vrbo. Okay.
We do. Because
Yeah.
Expedia, we're running it through a channel manager. We've seen deterioration in Expedia from 2023 to 2024. You're a little closer to Seattle. What's going on at Expedia? Because they've had some leadership shakeup. Vrbo was indicated as
people. I mean, couple of those the past couple of days.
Yeah. What's going on with Vrbo and Expedia?
I mean, I'm close to Seattle in the sense I'm in San Francisco, and I am from Seattle, and I love and wish Expedia well. I mean, here's what happened. Obviously, Expedia bought Vrbo, what, 6 years ago now?
I thought it was 2015.
Okay, so it's been a little while, and I think they obviously, when they bought Vrbo's HomeAway and Vrbo, and they've unified the brand, and Vrbo is one of the flagship brands for Expedia, right? I don't know. It seems like they've just had a series of missteps, and kind of this decision to bring Vrbo into to unify the platforms has really impacted suppliers, right? They had a series of technology misses in terms of having inventory wasn't showing up as available in Expedia and Vrbo and impacting people's bookings. And you got to remember, Vrbo and HomeAway, before they were acquired, they were a roll-up of 21 separate companies. So their tech stack was just a mess. I know that. So I think there's been a long coming price to pay on the technology side that is probably coming to bear, and is probably 2 more years of work to make it so things work much more seamlessly for folks who are trying to sell through Vrbo, Expedia, et cetera. As an example of the technology and efficiency, just yesterday, right? CTO and VP of engineering were let go.
Gone.
So, and the other part of it is, like, look,
but hold on, Andrew. Did you say the CTO of Expedia was let go? Was
yeah, yesterday a major shakeup happened.
was her name Rothy Murthy? Because
yeah,
what I heard was she was let go due to perhaps something that may have happened in Las Vegas with her. Yeah. So yeah, that was
could have. But I mean, just look at the pace of technology. Airbnb, I mean, we're an approved partner of Airbnb. They've got great APIs. They work with us hand in hand. They're an awesome team. Could have. But Expedia, we can't get them to take Expedia Vrbo. We can't take a meeting with them. Now we work much more with large folks, so we connect to PMSs. We don't care as much, but just emblematically, you know, for the OTAs, their game is kind of tech-enabled sales and great distribution and helping supply win. And I think it comes down to a very difficult technology environment for them to innovate in. And I think it's gonna be really hard to get out, which is not great for us, but I think that's the truth.
Well, let me ask you about a company that's in San Francisco. What about Airbnb? How's your relationship been with them? Have you noticed since they promoted David Stevenson from CFO to, I guess, handling new business, has there been a change?
Our exposure to Airbnb is on the API and partnership side. I think the change is that they, as of 12 months ago, made us and some other pricing and revenue management companies their official partners. And I think they reached the point where they said, hey, this technology is actually really important to the supply side. Let's go embrace it as opposed to fight it. I think Booking.com and Expedia are looking to do the same. But I mean, from my perspective, it's evident Airbnb's miles ahead on the technology side of these other teams and of kind of helping foster an ecosystem that's going to cause supply to win. And that's it's a huge advantage that they have right now, in my opinion. But you probably see them, you're going to be working more with the partnership side in terms of kind of the account management side, right? You're going to see them, how are they taking care of you all right now?
Well, I wanted to ask Miriam, are you sad to hear this news? Because she was like, had the biggest VRBO pom-poms ever. And she was just like, yeah, VRBO. She grew up with Vrbo and Escapia. And it has to be so sad to hear that they're falling apart.
That's why I started. That's why I'm in property management, was Escapia and VRBO. Now I'm a sad girl dealing with Airbnb and their bullshit. No, I think that it's definitely a change. Honestly, and this is going to kind of be a hit on Andrew and his group, but I think by the end of 2026, they'll have their own software with pricing and all of that'll be rolled out, that you won't even get an API fee, that they will take it over. I mean, we'll see. I mean, why wouldn't they go there?
Well, they have, right?
Well, they have, but not to the extent of they still let other people use their platform.
But that's rent by owners you're talking about, Miriam. I think with professional services, I don't see how they could restrict API access for professional managers. I mean, they would rebel against it because what they have has been built for a single host, whereas what Andrew's built is for large enterprise and for scale.
Oh, no, listen, I pushed us in Vegas. Remember, I'm like, go talk to those guys. No, I think it's going to be a mixture. I think that it will be a push either way. But I do, look, we all know Airbnb changes like they change t-shirts on what they're pushing. So we shall see in the next 2 to 3 years what that will look like.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
can I share one thing on that, Steve?
Yeah.
So first, like when Wheelhouse connects to a PMS, we're basically running distribution via the PMS now, right? So Airbnb is extremely unlikely to say you can't push prices from a PMS to us. extremely, extremely unlucky. So for our core customer, we're relatively unaffected. I think even for the hosts, like our thesis for a very long time is that if you're a marketplace like Airbnb, where you're connecting buyers and sellers, it's actually really difficult to also sit in the middle as the arbiter of price. Right. So if you look at marketplaces writ large, it's very, very rare for them to be in the pricing business. And the way to think about it, like think about the largest marketplaces in the world, like the New York Stock Exchange, they would never get in the way of letting the market just price itself for shares of stock. And I don't think Airbnb would either. And think about, you know, Marriott hotels, are they going to say to Expedia, just price my supply, I trust you? I don't think so. I don't think so. So our thesis for a long time is that we kind of help, we sit with supply. First of all, we only work for them. We help them build their strategies better. You all have talked today about the trade-offs of strategies that you're executing. Where like Airbnb is going to offer automated pricing, we're going to build revenue management. And that's kind of the way we think about our relationship, where most professional supply, through conversations with owners, through team decision-making, are going to run very effective revenue management strategies where you're turning those knobs and dials on risk. And that's why. Yeah.
So Andrew,
yeah.
Let me give you some more data on Airbnb, because in the last year, we've seen them be more supplier friendly than at any time in our history. Normally, obviously, they've been very guest centric. So one thing they did, and they didn't put out a lot of fanfare or press releases, but they completely changed their extenuating circumstance policy to make it pretty difficult for a consumer to actually exercise that extenuating circumstance and get a refund 24 hours prior to arrival. So I thought that was pretty significant in terms of pro supply. But the other thing is, they've actually been working with us. You know, one of the biggest pain points we have is double payment of tax. Now, maybe some of your smaller companies don't have this issue, but you know, Airbnb has told us multiple times that they file taxes, but they've been unwilling to share who they file taxes with, right? So, you know, it's like, well, we file taxes and you don't have to. And we basically told Airbnb, we can't operate like that. That's not going to fly if we have an audit with the Department of Revenue. If you actually are filing taxes for certain jurisdictions, because they don't file them for all of them, then let us know which jurisdictions you're filing for, and then we won't double pay taxes. And so this went on back and forth for 5 years. This year, they came to us and said, through Track, we now are sending through the API the jurisdictions that we collect and remit taxes for. Well, that's significant, because basically they're now telling us, okay, this city, this state, they're remitting taxes for. This city, they're not. And now we're partnering with Avalara, who you know, a big company that you probably work with. And what we want to do is reconcile that. And then the part that Airbnb is collecting taxes for and remitting, we will not remit as a double payment, and we will just simply focus on the part that they're not. That's remarkable. I mean, we talked to them for years about this and they wouldn't budge on it. Have you heard about this?
Hearing about it now. I mean, that's excellent. I think it's emblematic of a team that figured it out. I mean, they had their COVID moment, right? They had to raise a lot of money at not a great valuation. And I have no doubt that Brian Chesky saw the writing on the wall, and he's talked about this a lot and said, I need to get my stuff together. So I think part one was they got back to the basics during COVID. It's going to be healthy for them. Part two is, I think they've really understood that quality supply creation has to come through property management companies.
Okay, well, we're getting to the lightning round. I know you've seen LinkedIn posts. You've probably heard podcasts about VRMA. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
My thoughts are VRMA International, still the best conference I've been to in terms of attendance and money. VRMA, the two Vermas last year in Kansas and New Orleans were underwhelming for most on the supply side. And I know PMs have been disappointed too. I had a great time because I get to work with a lot of customers there. You know, I don't mind it. I think our industry needs to lean in right now. Steve, you got to lean in. I've got to lean in. Like, I think we got to help get that organization to where we want it to be. And I think the biggest complaints I've heard from you are around education and making the event good enough where people actually show up and learn something of value. And I'm writing up my third application for presentation at Verma International right now because I want it to be a damn good event. So I would say I like Michelle stepping in there. She's great. I don't know all the ins and outs of Drew leaving and other kind of layoffs. I don't. And you know, I'm tipping into that age at 40 of where I need to start helping Verma as opposed to just attending and hoping customers come by the booth.
Miriam, you see how diplomatic that answer is?
It's true. It's true.
Oh, it's all true. No, it's very, but he's just better than us, I guess. I don't know. I think our face don't hide it, and Andrew paces a little bit. Like when we ask him something or say something that he's going to question, he moves.
Oh, really?
You do.
Well, so let's get real here. I love this. So I would say, look, like brass tacks economics, right? My team spent $20,000 to go to Verma New Orleans. Are we going to make that back in customers? Absolutely. Was it an opportunity to test out and show a new product we're launching to a couple hundred people really fast? Absolutely. Am I happy with, could it have been better? Definitely, but I don't even have time to go to the education sessions. So your opinion of it is going to be informed much differently than me. What I am going to do is, Steve, I appreciate you because you're putting, you kind of put it to people. And if it wasn't true, we wouldn't be seeing change. And it is true. And now I'm moving into that phase of like, okay, cool. So people, you and me both want Verma to be better. And I think you've done a lot with Verma advocacy in the past. That's actually a really good response, even as you're calling them out, right? And I think I've got to step up to the plate too. I've been in the industry 10 years. It's time to do something about it. So that's where I sit.
That was better.
True.
All right. Well, there you have it. We've done plenty of VRMA episodes. I've got a couple angry VRMA board members who think I've gone a little overboard with coverage of VRMA. So we're going to just say we hope they get their leadership issues together, clean up their conflict of interest, improve transparency and governance, and do everything they can to maximize an international event that will be in Phoenix coming up in the middle of October. They've got plenty of time. Sounds like Andrew has made a couple presentation pitches, so hopefully we'll see him on stage. And I appreciate both Miriam and Andrew for being on this episode of Straight Fire VR. We're going to take a little break for a couple weeks during the summer unless we have to do an emergency podcast. Thank you, Heather. Bye.